Hi everyone, my name is Rishabh Tarve and I'm a student of Function of School of Technology. I'm pursuing a bachelor's degree, majors in computer science and specialization with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Currently, I'm a second semester student of Function of School of Technology, and till now I've completed the tech stack such as HTML, CSS, JavaScript, basics of Java, DSA. We are doing DSA, data structures algorithm concept, and solving lead code problems in Java programming language. Also, we have done code work questions on JavaScript. I use and also currently we are learning the React.js library in which we are creating micro projects in order to understand the concepts we are learning in React.js library and to implement them to deep for the understanding of the concepts we are learning in React.js library. So the concept we are currently learning is Recoil, under which it is a state management library, which is a library for state management. It is an updated form, or we can say a advanced form of useState library, because in the useState they don't allow you to manage that particular state for different components, or we can say you can't use that particular state for different components of a React. So simply by creating the component inside atoms, we can use them in different local components of the React. So talking about recoil, it consists of flow pattern pathway. It starts from the atoms, then which stores which is a state management for a particular uh, default particular value you have assigned, and you can every times that particular atom will be called in that local component, it re-renders, and uh, you can use it in multiple local components of the React. That's what the use of recoil. And under that, atoms are the smallest part of that particular state's management we are talking about. Then we have selectors. Selectors are the pure functions that are also acceptable to all the local components, and whatever we renders that particular way of accessing that particular value and to render it on the browser, selectors are used in local components by accessing them. Talking about the current micro projects we are working on is create a user feedback application, where a feedback application have to create using the React JS library. Then this user feedback should have must be using the concepts of React and Recoil. The application should allow users to input username and number of pending assignments. So this is a kind of user feedback that student has a number of pending assignments. According to their number of pending assignment, a feedback should be generated by using the Recoil and React component, and good interface for that particular feedback should be for application should be generated. And provide personalized feedback, must use recoil for state management and maintain a recoil item to store user data, including the username and number of pending assignment. So in data atoms, it simply take a default object such as the name of a particular key. That key should be globally unique, so you can't use that particular unique to in order to access that. And for higher order APIs, you can fetch that in after that. Talking about next, we have the implement a recall selector that generates feedback based on the user's input. So whatever we will get input from that particular atom, and that should be generated through the selectors, and we will implement that in our project. Then provide different feedback message depending on the number of pending assignment, and 0 for no input, fill the details to get feedback. 0, if the student has 0 pending assignment, it should return a personalized message as you are brilliant, and so on. For the one pending assignment, come on, you can do it, and so on. These personalized feedback we have to pass on whenever the user enters its username and the number of pending assignment. This is the kind of expected output that we have to generate. Form should be displayed where the customized dynamic name of the user should be displayed. One is once he enters his username and the number of pending assignment. So two input boxes should be displayed to the user, and a personalized message with the name and feedback should be displayed to the user. Talking about the next implementation, we have a button should be below the two input boxes we have initialized, should be available in order to get the user's feedback. So for starting this, we have to navigate it to our VS Code, and in order to start, you simply have to start your terminal. In order to create a React project to the terminal, navigate you to the terminal, then write the command as npx create React app, and After that, you simply have to pass the name for whatever micro project or project you are working on in React. So let's say I'm creating a user feedback form, so you can pass the value and so on. After this command, React project will be created, and you have to simply change your directory. If there are multiple files or folders have been opened in your VS Code, you have to change your directory to the particular folder we have created. So example, I have created a user feedback uh, a project. I will navigate my and command and provide instruction to the VS Code that I want to change my directory, and it will navigate it to my current project I'm working on. Then you have to simply start it on your local host using the command npm start, and your React project will be rendered on the web browser. So that's how we will start with the React project. Then I have already created the user feedback application folder. So this is the folder structure that we are looking at. A node module, public and src folder will be visible, and few gitignore and package.json files will be available. So this will be the folder structure initially will be updated to you when you will initialize the React project. Then you have to simply, in order to create the user feedback form, we will navigate to the src folder. Under the src folder, there will be multiple files available to you. These atoms, component and selector we have created customized in order to create the user feedback application. Talking about the next files, we have app.cs, app.js, app.test, and so on. These are all the files by default you will get. We will simply navigate so this user feedback application is having the usage of state management library, which is Recoil. So to install that particular library in your VS Code, you simply, or in the current folder which you are having, so you have to simply change your directory. If by means you have changed your directory to any other folder, you simply have to change your directory first, then give the name of the folder where that particular project is have been located. Then after this cd change directory and the name of your file, you will be navigated to the project you are working on. Then you have to simply write this command npm I npm install recoil. So after this pressing this command, the recoil state management library will be installed to that particular project which you are working on. You can test that using the package.json, and under that you will find the dependencies have been installed for that particular recoil state management library version 0.7.7, which is currently managed by Facebook. So this is an experimental project which has been started to state management. It is better than useState, I have already discussed, because it allows us to create a single atoms and we can use it in different local components of React. So let's start with the uh, user feedback application which we are creating using the recoil state management library. So after that, you have to navigate to the app.js, and you will get pre-written code. You simply have to erase all of them and use a snippet code, that is RFC, React Functional Component. So React Functional Component are similar as the JavaScript functions, but here we will call them as a React components, and RFC snippet will give you the React functional component code where you will get a few lines of code as a import React from React, import React object from React library, and a functional component export default keyword will be used. So particularly the component which you are using, you can render it or you can import it any component wherever you want. You simply have to use that command export default. So that particular component which you have created will be exported, and you can import them using the import keyword and the name of the component you have created, and from the particular folder location where it is accessible. Talking about the next we have is function application. Here we have got, because we are currently in the app.js file, and functional component app has been created. Then a return statement for that particular component has been initialized to us, and a div will be created by default. But React don't allow you to return multiple HTML elements, so you simply have to use fragments or wrap all the HTML elements inside the fragments in order to return that and render that on the web browser. So that's why we have used the fragments. So the fragments I was talking about this one. Talking about the next we have, you should simply import the recoil root. Why we are importing the recoil root? Because we are implementing the functionality of atoms and React Recoil state management library. So you simply have to import that using the destructure format, import recoil root from the recoil state management library, which we have installed. Talking about next, we have you have to simply wrap the data display. So currently the component you can see under the src folder we have created is having a folder component under which we have created a .jsx file, data display.jsx. So data display.jsx is the main file where all my commands or all my components which we are rendering using the atoms and selector as being displayed. And we have called that particularly using the import functionality, import data display from the dot slash folder location. So dot slash in the folder location simply means that you are in the current folder, and after that you have to pass the folder location. Talking about next, we have, you simply have to, whatever you have imported from the recoil root, so you have to use the recoil functionality in your web browser, and to use that items and selector, you have to simply uh, wrap your data display or whichever component you have created in order to render on the web browser using the atoms or selector. You have to wrap them using the recoil root. So I have wrapped the data display under the recoil root component which I have created. The next I have created, so to use recoil root or state management library, there is a code standard that you have to create different folders such as atoms and selector. Under the atoms, you simply have to pass a atom function which takes in the format of key value pairs, and the key has a unique ID, and that ID should have a name, and that ID should have a globally unique from any other atom which you have initialized. Talking about the next, we have what I was talking about. Let me display you. So this is the atom which we are talking about from the initialized starting that. In order to use the atom, you simply have to import it from the recoil state management library in the destructure format. Then you can use that. To use that, you have to simply use the atom function. So in order to use the atom function, you have to initialize it with a variable. So I have initialized it with a variable const data, and atom function has been initialized after inside the parenthesis, and object has been created. Object has been created with two keys and a default value. So my key is data, and default value is username and assignment. So you currently can't understand that the default value is username and pending assignment because we have initialized that value in the data display which I was talking about. I will discuss it in another minute when I will explain the data display. So data display is where my all the data is being rendered and taking from the atoms statement library which we have initialized. The first we have is the imported data from the atoms data which we have initialized. So it is importing the data which we have created the variable using the atom function. Then the use recoil state and use recoil value. In order to use the atom function, or in order to use the atoms from the recoil state, you have to use the use recoil state. As you use the use state hook, you simply have to use the use recoil state in order to use that atom. And simply for the selector, you have to use the use recoil value. The next we have is compute data from the selector. So you can see here under the selector, we have initialized created a file as compute data display. So we have also imported that compute data from the particular location. So all the things which we have created using the atoms and selector, we are importing them in the data display, and we will use it further. Talking about the next, we have also used the use state because data, yeah, we have created different use state and updated its value accordingly. That's why we are using the use state to update its value with a default value in the starting. The next we have is const data display. Variable has been initialized, and it is a currently arrow function data display which is currently being initialized with a use recoil state, and use recoil state has a default value with the atoms data which we have initialized, and two variables have been initialized, data 2 and set data. So these the data 2 and set data is the data we are taking from the user in the form which we have created under the data display. And let me explain you what it's all consists of. So under the return statement of the component data display, all the things we have currently wrapped in the fragments. The first we have is the form tag. Form tag has, we will discuss on submit attribute which we are using here for that form tag. Now the next we have is we have created a div. The div have been named as the class name box. So the box is clearly this one. Let me navigate you to this portion. So this is the box we are talking about. It's containing the complete user feedback and the two of the input box. So the main div is containing this one. The next we have is box content. Then we have the class name as heading where the data is having the data2.username. So data2.username is taking name from the user and being rendered in the atom, and it will be displayed to the user after the high symbol. Then the next we have is the S3 your feedback. Your feedback is also having a props have been passed, and that prop is containing the value from where it is being displayed. The next we have two input tags, and two input tags is containing the allowing the user to enter the username. The type text is being provided. So the text we are going to in the type of input we are taking from the user will be of text type. The next we have is placeholder. So whatever the user want to input, a hint will be provided to you that you have to enter your username. So the placeholder attribute is doing that work. Then the next attribute you have the ID. So ID is simply accessing that value in order to, whenever we want to access that value, wherever if we want in the atoms or in the selectors, we can access them with the ID attribute. So we have provided the ID as username. Then the on-change attribute we have created. So the on-change is having a props passing. So a function has been created with the handle change functionality, and that handle change will work whenever that particular input box will be changed. Then the next we have is class name. So we have used the class name and providing the styling for that particular input box using the input box class name we have provided. Then two BRs have been given in order to provide spacing. Then the next we have an input tag. The next input tag we having with a type number. So the user can understand that he has to enter a number in order to provide the input. The next we have is a attribute as placeholder. So he has to enter the number of pending assignment he is having. Then the next we are having a ID as pending assignment. So whenever we want to access the number of pending assignment entered by the user, we can access it using the ID attribute. And after that, on change attribute have been initialized. So on change will work whenever that particular input box we are talking about, this one, the number of pending assignment, whenever it will change, what functionality should be implemented, we have added that above, we will discuss. And also to add styling to that particular class name, we have also used the input box. We have given both the input box same class name, so we can add styling one to one of them and should implemented in both of them. Then 2BR, break the line. So to provide spacing, this is hard code. We can also provide using the CSS, but we have for initialization, we have used the BR tag. The next, we have created a button tag, get your feedback. So we have also implemented a hover effect, you can see using the style. So there is a button I'm talking about inside the form, a button tag and class name submit button we have given. So we can add styling to that. The hover effect is coming from that particular class name using the app.css. Button tag has been called, main div for that particular component have been closed, box content, and the main div has been closed, and the form tag has been closed, and all of them have been wrapped in the fragment. And similarly, the return statement have been closed using the parentheses and curly braces. Export default data display, so we can use them in the app.js. We have exported that particular component which we have created, which we have used. Talking about the uh, two different state variables we have initialized, we have used the const data display we have used. So data display is used having an arrow function where it is taking a state variable, use recoil state, the atom which we have initialized, taking the particular default value as data, and data2 and set data will be updated whenever it will be called. Const use and user set, so this is also a state variable you have initialized. And use state, we have passed the default value as username as key as username, and the value as user, and pending assignment by default -1. Why we have passed the as object and the by default value of the pending assignment -1? Because the number of assignment for a particular student can be 0. So there can be possibility that a user have less than user cannot have less than -1 pending assignment. So we have passed that particularly default value. The next we have a const handle submit. So once the particular button will be clicked, the handle will be executed, and arrow function will be initialized, and it is telling the web browser event.prevent default. The next line we have event.prevent default is initializing the console to not to console that particular value, to display it to the user, and to state in its to keep it away from its default state. Then state data use, we have passed the props we have used in the initialized in the use state variable. And the const handle change we have initialized. So handle change is simply doing what? So const handle change event have been initialized, and that we have executing using the arrow function event don't prevent default. So again, to prevent it from going into the default state. Then a user state have been initialized, and whatever the data we have initially in the use state variable, by using the spread operator we are accessing that, and the current value entered by the user we are accessing it using the event.target.id. We have used the attribute and event.target.value. So whatever the users enter will be going to be stored here. The next we have initialized the variable const result and use recoil value, because we want to use the selector we have created, compute data display. So the number of, so whatever the personalized message we want to use, we have matched it with the customized personalized feedback using this. So this is what all the data display is happening. Now talking about the selector which we have created, let's start with the atoms we have created. So at first we have imported atom from the recoil which we have installed. Then we have export data constant from the atom, and by default we have given the key as data, and default value will be the whatever we have initialized, the username user and pending assignment -1. So the atom must take a unique global unique key and by default value. So by default value username user. So this is what initially the default value will be provided, and a feedback field details to get feedback, and number of pending assignment -1. So the user can have 0. The next we have imported the selector from the recoil, because a selector is a mm, pure function and it can be used in different React components, and we have imported data from atoms.data, export constant compute data selector. We have used that using the selector function. Then by default we have passed the value as key compute data and get. So the get function we are using in the selector is simply getting that value and will fetch with according to the user input. So if let's say the value will be get data from the user, if value dot pending assignment which we have created accessing the data is less than -1, then it simply return that field details to get feedback. Else if value of that pending assignment will be 0, personalized message will be returned, you are brilliant, and so on for the 1 2 3 and 5 3 4 and 5. The personalized feedback will be provided to the user. At last, if the user enters a number greater than 6, then the personalized message will be displayed to the user, right number lower than 6. And all of them have been called in the app.js, and we have wrapped all of them inside the recoil root. And once we will start with the user feedback app, then npm start. By this command you change your directory from the VS Code to that particular project you are working on, and let's say I have entered the username as Rishabh and the number of pending assignment as 0. So it is giving me changing my username in the starting from the default value to the current value which I have input as hi Rishabh, and your feedback is you are brilliant. Then so on for 1, and come on, you can do it, and so on for it's working for all those number of pending assignment for the user. So on, if the users enter 7 or greater than 6, then it simply return the feedback as write the number lower than 6. So that was all we are working on for the micro project user feedback application. Thank you.